So this whole chapter is all about factoring, right? How to factor an equation. And then we learn how many methods? We learn grouping. We group them to find the greatest common factor. We have AC method or cross multiply. Also, we have some special products such as the differences of square, the sum or differences. Let's do the sum of cube. And the perfect square, right? And these two, you can expand it to add and subtract, add and subtract. As for cube, we use so to try to help us to memorize how the sign works after you factor it. Okay, so in this chapter, I will discuss about what's the factoring strategy. Okay, do you remember the last example that we talked about in last classes? We always what? Find or factor out the greatest common factor first. Okay, if we see something that have two terms, we will what? There's only two options for us. If two terms for the equation, we either use the sum, not the sum. If it's two terms, we can use the differences of square or the sum of cubes, right? But remember that if it's a squared plus b squared is equals to a prime, they can factor it. If it's a squared minus b squared is equals to a plus b times a minus b. If it's a to the cube minus b to the cube is equals to a b ups. A squared, ab, b squared, and so same. Oh, same is subtracting. Same, opposite, always positive. Or, of course, the sum of the cubes, which is a plus b, a squared minus ab plus b squared. Okay, if you see three terms in the equation, what you can do is you use AC method. Cross multiply. Or what the perfect square formula. Okay, so for perfect square formula, we have what? A squared plus 2ab plus b squared is equals to a plus b squared. Similarly to subtracting, okay, so for AC method, the idea is what? Two number multiply is equal to the third number. Two number they add together is equals to the second term's coefficient, or the second number. I think AC method and the cross multiply is quite similar. Okay. And then if you see four terms, what method you will use is grouping. and then you factor them, right? Okay, so this is the one I've written in blue is the strategy of how to factor. So now let me give you some example. I have 4x squared plus 56xy plus 196y squared. Remember what I say? Always find the greatest common factor first. That means we want to factor that part out. What is the greatest common factor? In this case would be 4. So I factor the 4 out, I have x squared plus 14sy plus 49y squared. Okay, since it's 3 terms, let's look back. 3 terms, we have this method, AC method, cross multiply, or perfect square. Well, in this case, I would like to use either perfect square or AC method, whatever you feel comfortable with, since this coefficient is 0 to 1. So we don't need to use the cross multiply. So I know that you're already really familiar with AC method. So in this case, I want to use perfect square ones. So perfect square is what? I want to have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, which is equals to a plus b squared. So that means I need to rewrite this as a and b. So our a is x. So 14xy divided by 2x is equal to what? 7y, which is, this is our b. And then 49y squared is equal to 7y squared. So now we have found our a and the b. So this is equal to 4 times x plus 7y squared. Okay. Okay. Another example, we have 4xy squared plus 5 plus 15xy minus 35 x4 minus 100 squared. Well, first step is we want to find the greatest common factor first. So in this case would be 5x. So I factor out the 5x, what's remain is xy plus 3y minus 7x minus 21. And then since this is 4 terms, in 4 terms, what we need to use is when we group them, we use grouping methods. So now when we group these, look at the first term. Common factor is y, and for this one, the common factor is what? -7. So when we group them, don't forget whatever outside the parentheses. This is also part of the equation. So inside the parentheses, we group y equals to x plus 3 minus 7, and then x plus, remember the sign will change, plus 3. Now they have a common factor x plus 3. So that means I can write it as y minus 7 and then x plus 3. Okay. Now, what if I have 100x squared minus 400? We want to find the greatest common factor first, which is 100. I factor 100 out, I have x squared minus 4, 2 terms. In 2 terms, how many methods we have? Difference of a square and the sum of the cube. Well, this is obvious square because you already see the square, the second power of x, and 4 is a perfect square. The square root of 4 is what? Is 2. So that means we're going to use the differences of square. So I have x squared minus 2 squared. And then I found 2 square root, which is x plus 2 times x minus 2. Okay. So the next is I have 108 x cubed y squared minus 39x squared y squared plus 3x y squared. Common factor first, which is 3x y squared. And then I factor it out. I have 36x squared minus 13x squared plus 1. Okay. Oh, this is x, sorry, 13x. Okay, so now they have 3 terms. What 2 do we have? What 2's do we have? Let's go back and look at 3 terms. We have AC method, cross multiply, and perfect square. So now we use our cross multiply. So I have what? 36x squared and 1. So for 1, you only have one combination, right? Which is either positive 1, 1 times 1 equals to 1, or negative times negative 1 is equal to 1. Since this is negative sign, so that means we're looking for something is negative. And then 36x squared, you can separate into what? 4x and 9x. Cross multiply, you have what? 4x, negative 4x minus 9x, which is negative 13x, is the second terms. What we're looking for is this group. We group these together, we group these together. So I have 3xy times 4x minus 1 and then 9x minus 1. Okay. So the next is 5 at 625 to the y cube. Again, you see the cube, you already have an idea because we saw the cube, so definitely it's sum of the cube. But always the first step should be find the greatest common factor first, which is our 5. I have a 5 out and then 1 plus 125y to the cube. And then 125 cube, we know that we need to use cube, sum of the cubes. So I can write it as 5y cubes. So our cube roots are 1 and 5y. Now, what we use is what? And 5y squared. Don't forget the parentheses because I want to square the whole thing. Now we use SOAP, right? Same, positive, opposite, negative, always positive. Okay, and now we simplify it, we'll have 1 plus 5y times 1 minus 5y plus 25y squared. So that's the strategy of how you factor. Always find the greatest common factor first, and then determine by how many terms you have in the equation, and then you can use the method that we taught in the previous classes, which is if it's 2 terms, we use the difference of square, the sum of cube. If it's 3 terms, we use AC method, cross multiply, and perfect square. If it's 4 terms, we use group. Okay, so this is the strategy. So don't forget the homework. In the next week, we still have 1 more classes today, which is chapter 6.7. And then next week, we will have a review. And then on Wednesday, we will have a test. Okay.